Good morning and welcome to Morning Movie News. Yesterday, Disney finally laid claim to a release date for Star Wars Episode 7. Now, truth be told, they could really have any date they wanted because the movie's just that big. However, they had to make it a formality so they can not only start promoting it and planning what's going to be obviously a very big advertising campaign, but as somewhat of a courtesy to the other studios who really have to get out of the way of this movie. And there are a few that I think are going to have to move, but we'll get to that in a second. Anyway, the press release came out. I actually got it in my email, and it was so weird when I clicked on it because it was just a paragraph. It didn't really make much of an effort as a press release as far as press releases go. There weren't even any pictures associated with it. It wasn't even, justified on the right side. It was crazy. And I think Disney basically just went, December 18th, 2015, bitches. And all the other studios were like, because there are some big movies that now have a problem. By far and away, Warcraft is the biggest. Warcraft is supposed to come out, already said it was coming out December 18th, 2015, and it could stick to its guns, and we could have a fantasy, medieval fantasy versus sci-fi fantasy go head-to-head on that date, but really, I think that would just be such an obstacle for Warcraft. I don't think it wants to get into that fight. So you're probably going to see Warcraft move. Also, two other films that might have a problem because Star Wars, and that's another thing, Star Wars has such a big reach demographic-wise that you really can't say, oh, well, it's going to only play to this group and we can get this other group. Everyone's going to see Star Wars Episode 7. So Alvin and the Chipmunks 4 is set to come out earlier in December. I think that might have to move. And Kung Fu Panda 3 will probably definitely have to move. That's set to come out the very next week in December. That was going to be a Christmas release. I think that's an interesting choice for Kung Fu Panda. The other movies have been summer releases. But after Kung Fu Panda 2, I think didn't do quite as well. Maybe they thought they'd go to December. But Fox is going to have to move that for DreamWorks because, again, just a week later, it'll be obliterated. And I really like the Kung Fu Panda franchise. I loved to, and I want to see it have a fair shot at the box office. So, and also, I think another reason that Disney had to lay claim to this was because they wanted to give the fans something. We've had so many casting rumors. Clearly, they're not ready to give any official casting news. Even anyone they're talking to, it's all just a bunch of mystery. I guess it wouldn't be responsible to talk about who's being discussed, but we're getting nothing. So at least, we know this isn't some cruel joke from Disney and JJ Abrams that they do have a Star Wars Episode 7 being made and it is on its way. And also this week, JJ Abrams went into a little bit of depth into why Michael Arndt was taken off of the script for Star Wars Episode 7. He said it wasn't anything to do with Arndt's abilities as a screenwriter. He said he is one of the best in the business and said very nice things about him, so that was very gracious of JJ Abrams, I think. But he said it just was really a matter of time. In order to make this release date, which we now know is December 18th, 2015, they had to, Arndt was just too slow. So Abrams and Lawrence Kasdan had to just take over and make sure this thing was done in time so they had enough time to shoot the film and go through post-production, obviously, and have a quality final product. We'll see if they do get a quality final product, but, they're mindful of their time frame. So you can take that either as a good or a bad thing, actually. Either it's good that they're being so responsible, or is this the first signs of rushing the film? We'll see. All right, so that's the first story of the day. The second story of the day is that Warner Brothers is, speaking of publicity, Warner Brothers is getting increasingly aggressive in their fight with Disney Marvel, Warner Brothers DC. Not only did they really go toe-to-toe with them at San Diego Comic-Con with some major announcements, and not only did I feel they won the casting announcement round of Ben Affleck versus James Spader, but this weekend, as Thor hits theaters, they are going to have a webcast on this Saturday on Yahoo. Kevin Smith is hosting about Man of Steel. And this is to talk about officially the Man of Steel Blu-ray release, which is later this month. However, Warner Brothers is really promoting this as a sneak peek at Man of Steel 2, aka Batman vs. Superman. And that Kevin Smith and company are kind of promising some major announcements. Now, what they think is a major announcement and what we feel is a major announcement are probably two very different things, but they might actually come through here. I think Warner Brothers has been very good publicity-wise, and I think they are planning something big. And they're going to probably steal Thor's Thunder this weekend a little bit. So what could they be announcing? There's already a bunch of speculation. If you want to watch this webcast, I think you can go to the Facebook page for Man of Steel and ask a question in advance if you want to submit that. I'll put links to this stuff in the video description. But I don't know if I can find the link to the Yahoo where it's going to be. But Kevin Smith is going to host this. It's going to start at noon Eastern Standard Time here, so that's New York time, which would be 9 a.m. on the West Coast. And then for everyone who's in the UK, that's 5 p.m. I think that's really a good sweet spot to kind of hit all the major movie markets. I'm sorry, Asia, you are definitely a major movie market, but you're just too far off the grid. But I'm sure this will hit the news immediately. But so what could we be getting? The biggest speculation is that it will be announced that this is actually a Trinity film, that Wonder Woman will be making an appearance. And Wonder Woman rumors continue to swirl. The latest are from Variety. Variety has reported that Jamie Alexander, as I noted to you guys, is already committed at Marvel. She just cannot take this role. So the other people being considered are, they said, Olga Kurylenko is actually in the running. They confirmed that. Another person who I actually am excited about, I believe her name is Gal Gadot from Fast and Furious films, Han's girlfriend. She didn't have a lot of screen time, but I felt she made a good impression in the time that she did have. And I felt, as I said was important yesterday, I think she's likable to women. I think men and women would like her. And she comes from the Fast and Furious franchise. And obviously, sorry, spoiler, it's been out for a long time. She can't go back to that, so she's looking for a gig. And the other person is, I forget the name off the top of my head, I'm afraid, I'm sorry, but it's an actress from G.I. Joe Retaliation. She played one of the characters there. So I think those are, you can check out the article in Variety for the specifics, but those seem like better casting choices to me anyway. So that's one thing they could be announcing, that Wonder Woman will show up. The other possible announcement that got a lot of people interested was that Nightwing would make an appearance here. Now, this movie's getting super crowded. I don't know why Ben Affleck Batman needs a Nightwing, especially since Ben Affleck Batman himself hasn't been established. And I don't know why you would bring a Nightwing in if it's not going to be Joseph Gordon-Levitt. That just kind of seems like adding insult to injury. Joseph Gordon-Levitt, you just got into the Nolanverse, but now we're ending it, and we're going to give your role to somebody else that you made everybody excited about. But as I said, I think this movie's getting very crowded. If you're going to have the Trinity, if you're going to maybe potentially have Lex Luthor, Feora, I think, is coming back because she's in the Superman Wonder Woman comic. They have her, and I think she's being introduced into the DC comics because the character was so popular in the films. So I think I vote for no for Nightwing. And also, I don't know how Nightwing would really resonate with viewers if there was no Robin. I mean, I guess this is supposed to be an older Batman, so Robin took place in the past. I guess that's a way to get around Robin. But I still feel Robin can work if done correctly. If you can get a really tough little kick-ass kid, I think it could actually be really cool. And because Robin is, one of the most famous and most popular comic book characters of all time. Pretty impressive for a sidekick. I think he's one of the few sidekicks that's as popular as a leading superhero. All right, so that's the second story of the day. The third story of the day, speaking of Thor's, there was an interesting article that I checked out this week talking about how Marvel Studios is trying to streamline their special effects department to make their movies not only have all the same visual tone, but to make sure that they can make these go faster, they can do the rendering faster, they can get the movies ready faster, and less expensive, keep the costs down. And another interesting fact from the article is that they admitted that of all the Marvel movies, 90% of every shot is visual effects. So you're really basically having just actors in front of green screen and filling in everything behind them, which I think is fascinating. I think that it works to some degree. I think, I just saw Thor The Dark World. You can check out my review. I think that it's very believable, but I think that maybe that might be contributing a little bit to some of the cartoony aspects that Marvel might be developing. I think it's important for there to be some real-world interaction for actors. But I do like the look of the Marvel films, and basically they said they use a lot of different special effects vendors. It's too much for one place to handle, and they need the cinematographer to work with the special effects houses to match the color palette. And so they're really creating a color scheme, a visual look for the whole Marvel Cinematic Universe. And that's an interesting behind-the-scenes look. And you know what? It was a good article. I'll also include that link in the video description. All right, so those are the three stories for the day. As for the viewer question, oh, by the way, these comments are so hard to traverse. But don't worry, I clicked on the show more comments, so I got to see everyone's comments, I believe. It's just a really crazy system. All right, so the question comes from Tony Cooper. And Tony says, "Hi, Grace. I'm really tempted to start a Netflix subscription if they keep going in this direction with their work. and this works. He's talking about the Marvel Netflix deal. And then he further asks, why do you think the Punisher isn't going to be involved here? Because it is the Hell's Kitchen group. It seems like a perfect place, but is Marvel afraid to commit to a non-powered hero like the lack of a Black Widow movie? Or is it also that perhaps the Punisher is just too gritty even for a Netflix series? This also kind of ties into another question. I forget who asked it, I'm sorry, but somebody also said, well, Grace, you said you didn't like DC splitting their heroes up between film and television. How are you okay with Marvel? I feel Marvel was very smart here in that they're keeping their Avengers on screen, on the big screen, and they're taking this Hell's Kitchen Heroes for Hire subgroup, the Marvel Knights group, and they're spinning them off into television. It will be kind of like an Avengers Light to some degree, but these characters are darker. They are grittier, Tony. This is a grittier line of superheroes. So I think that it'll kind of give it its own feel. Will it detract from people? I think mainstream moviegoers might be able to take on only so many superheroes. Will they jump to this new Hell's Kitchen group, or will they stick with the Avengers? It's all risky, but I think that's why I'm okay with what Marvel's doing. I feel they found a clear delineation, and if perhaps they would take, for instance, DC were to find a way to do that with maybe I don't know, the JSA, that could work. But I think my big problem is, like, for instance, you're giving Jim Gordon and the Flash, characters that are big screen and are very much related to big screen characters, you're putting them on the small screen. So that's my problem there. As for the Punisher, I think that the reason the Punisher isn't involved here is because I think that the Punisher would work definitely as a television series for Netflix. I think they're going for gritty. I think they're going to push the edge of the envelope. That's the whole reason to go to Netflix. There aren't the same kind of rules, quote unquote, that there are on network television. But I think the Punisher just isn't a team player. And the whole point here is to work to this Defenders crossover series that will be the fifth, and the four characters are going to get their own miniseries, and then they're going to have all crossed over into a fifth called the Defenders. And the Punisher just really can't take place in that. So I think they'll save him. I think if this is a huge hit, they've already said that if this goes well, that there could be movies spun off of this. I don't know if that's going to work. Basically, Marvel's just saying they're not closing the door on anything. But, if this is successful enough, you could see the Hell's Kitchen universe expand. You could see Punisher. You could see, for instance, Misty Knight come in there, who runs Heroes for Hires. That would be interesting. And maybe her partner, Colleen Wing. There are other characters. You could see Elektra come in here. There's a whole bunch of ways this could expand. And there could be this cameos. This could be a way to drum up interest. We don't know yet. But I wouldn't, as Marvel itself is saying, never say never. Anything and everything is on the table. All right, so that's today's morning movie news. Thank you for tuning in. Please write down below what you think of today's top stories, and as well as a viewer question. And be sure to let me know what you'd like to see covered on Monday and any questions you might have. Thanks for watching. Bye.